So we've seen a lot of content about the what, and I want to talk a little bit about the how here. So it's my talk here is called Innovation at the Edges, and it's around ways to drive and think about innovation within organizations. So the first question really is, where does innovation happen in your organization, do you think? Is it in the R&D centre that's up in Leeds with the boffins in the white coat? Is it in the marketing meeting that might be happening down south? And the answer is it's probably actually a little bit, but probably neither of these. Because most teams and departments within organizations are specialists. Most of the time, their aim is to know more and more about less and less things. They're deep specialisms. At the core of an organization, what you have the engine room. What you're trying to do is create a finely tuned engine of efficiency. Deviation from that agreed course generates waste, confusion and delay, as the fat controller would probably say, actually. The reality is that innovation tends to happen outside of that. It happens where different kinds of people meet, at the intersections between teams, departments, old and young, between lifers in your organizations and the rookies who have only just joined. It's kind of the same as back in the 18th century in the coffee houses of London. You know, the great scientific ideas of our time all appeared and popped up through conversations, through wages and collaborations between great mathematicians and physicists of our time. You know, it's Newton and Halley trying to work out why planets take the particular path they do around the globe, around the solar system. And the reason it happens is because those coffee shops were levelers. They're social levelers. Tradespeople don't have to give up their seat to academics. It's those places where ideas and opinions are voiced and are listened to. And in some ways, the internet is kind of like a giant global 18th century coffee shop. It's a place where different people have a voice. It's kind of a triumph of organized chaos. It's a working anarchy. It's a loosely organized network that's founded on these principles that Tim Berners-Lee set out when he first sort of defined the protocols that set out the internet. And he worked really hard to ensure that those protocols and those processes weren't patented and people were going to purely profit from connectivity. So that open sharing culture is kind of built into the DNA of the internet. And that's facilitating these collisions between the different kinds of people, organizations and cultures. And that's kind of the edges. That's what we call innovation at the edges, where these people come together, different stuff happens. And if you think about it, it's this shift a little bit. So if you think about big inventions that we've had recently, certainly in consumer internet space, so Google and Facebook and Yahoo, they weren't created in R&D labs off the back of a brief. They're created by people in dorm rooms coming up with ideas. You build it, and then you work out how to sell it. You know, the internet and Moore's Law, we've chatted about it, that drives the cost of innovation down. It becomes more and more easy to experiment. And that's a real paradigm shift. It's a shift from work out what you want, ask for money, get funded, then build it, then try and sell it, through to build it, work out what it is, and then try and sell it. And the key to doing that, to living in that model, in that world of experimentation, is being able to pivot, to be able to change the thing that you do based on what's working and what isn't. So YouTube started in 2005 as a dating site. Flickr started out as a feature for a role-playing game. But it's as people recognized and understood what their platforms could do that they could then pivot. What's going on here is Oreo are 3D printing a cookie at South by Southwest. So they are experimenting with sort of 3D printers as well, kind of squirting machines, and you can go up there and you can work out exactly specifically the type of flavor that you want and then have that cookie created. They did one that created cookies off the back of internet trends, trending on Twitter. Now, they're not doing that because they think 3D printing food is a future for them. It's because they think, that's an interesting technology. We can rock up at South by, have that. It'll create brand engagement. It'll create an experience around that cookie. And they're right. You know, they had queues around the block every single day it was open. So in that sense, it worked. But it's about what I'm interested in is their innovation approach. Their approach to saying, hey, that's something cool. That's interesting. Let's have a little play with it. So you create it. You then work out what works and you pivot. The next bit is around sort of learning as you do. You know, don't be afraid to experiment. So Joy Ito is director of MIT, their innovation lab in the US, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So he took his team through to Shenzhen in China, and they found people on the street selling mobile phones, working out from these very low-cost Android mobile phones. They'd talk to people, they'd get feedback from the consumers they met on the street, and then they would take those ideas back to the factory, alter the production process, come back out the next day with a new version of that phone. So you're taking the ideas of software development, of agile and of creation, and moving it into hardware development and mobile phone creation. It's important to sort of challenge and look at the processes that you've got around your systems. So when you're doing that, you're learning by doing. One of the important things to then try and optimize are the tools that you're working with. So this is a project that's come up through IDEO. IDEO, big innovation design consultancy, and they're looking at reimagining the tools that you need for moving into this new process of creating as you go. This is sort of a imagine what the future looks like type video of someone creating, it's a table it's tools that fit into your design flow. So as this little girl is drawing a dinosaur, she then suddenly gets loads of options for other tails and other hands that are in the same style as hers, and she can bring it in. So it's not the tools doing the work, but it's being able to get into that flow. As soon as you start thinking and worrying about the tool, then you've sort of lost the moment. If you have to think about how a paintbrush works, you can't use a paintbrush. So the more you can get your tools to work into your flow, the better. So when you're creating stuff, last point I want to make around this is thinking about byproducts and potentially byproducts that can be useful. So we've collided loads of new people, come up with innovative ideas and approaches of how to do it. We're making stuff quickly. The next thing is think about how do we find some byproducts in our process. So think about sawdust. Sawdust was a waste item, obviously, at first. When they first started, sawmills started creating sawdust, ended up on the floor. What's the use of it? Now, it's an innovation. Someone's discovered sawdust actually was useful. We can use it for all sorts of stuff. You mop up, spills, petrol stations. You can use it for all sorts of useful things. And in that sense, I want you to think about, are there processes and things that you do through your byproducts you can create out of processes that you currently live through? So here's an example of one that's worked. So there's a chap called Dean Kamen. He's an inventor, engineer, invented the Segway, a bunch of other cool stuff. He was sort of motivated by this idea that 3.5 million people every year die due to the consumption of unsanitary water. 2/3 of the earth covered in water, but only 1% is actually drinkable. So he's an engineer. He set out to solve that problem. He's invented 2 machines. Well done. This one on the right-hand side is called a slingshot. Creates 800 litres of drinkable water every day. It does that using electricity. It uses less than the hourly rate of electricity of a hairdryer. That's quite a cool machine. It can do it from anything that looks wet. So it can even create it from raw sewage. In a demonstration, he weed into it and then drank it. It does it through distillation. A very, very smart machine. And it creates medical-grade water. And then the other machine on the left-hand side creates electricity. That creates, usefully enough, 1 kilowatt hour, which is the same amount that the machine on the right needs. So these 2 things are point-of-use infrastructure in some senses. So you can create water and electricity exactly at the point you need it. Now, his challenge was, how does he get these machines out to the rest of the world who can create it? So he thought, what's the one company that's got the largest distribution and logistics team in the world? Coca-Cola. Anywhere you go in the world, you can obviously buy a Coke. So he rang up Coke and they said, will you help me get these machines out to the places that need them? And they said, yes, we've got one request. Will you paint it red and make it be able to produce Coca-Cola drinks? So the item on the right is Coca-Cola Freestyle. So based on the back of that, you can then mix on-demand, Fanta, Coca-Cola, all that stuff. So Coke, brilliant, they solved their problem. Off the back of that, they kept their promise, and they created this thing on the left, which is called the Coke Eco Center. So yes, you can go up there, you get free water, it does the electricity, does storing of medicines and vaccines, all those great things. Coke have a kiosk, they can sell Coca-Cola, it's generated at point of use, there's a TV there, it becomes a social center. It's a really useful innovation at point of use. There's no need to build a road, there's no need to build a pipeline or an electricity line. You can just drop one of these things and it immediately starts creating 800 litres of clean, drinkable water every day. Brilliant idea. So it's point-of-use technologies come out of byproducts. So other byproducts, quickly, Google and Facebook. Now, they're the biggest technology companies in the world, but they're hitting a problem. They can't grow their user base anymore because not enough people are connected. So they've shifted their sense. They've both set up what appear to be kind of non-profit, altruistic teams that are going out there connecting the world. both with quite mad ideas. Top one's Project Loon, you might have heard of. Google are putting balloons into space to start delivering Wi-Fi connectivity to the developing world. Facebook have just launched Internet.org in the last couple of weeks. They've got geostationary solar-powered aeroplanes that fly around continually, and their plan is to beam internet through lasers onto the ground. Now, I understand technology, but that phrase that I read, beam internet using lasers, I don't understand, but I'm just going to give it to you. So these are two people. So it's using social development as a growth strategy. Interesting proposition. So a couple of key takeouts from that. Let's find collaborations within our network. Let's find people and partners that we can work with that can extend our ability and our reach and our innovation. Let's lower the barriers of experimentation within our companies. Make it cool for people to fail. Make it easy for them to try stuff out. Embrace new opportunities and pivot. So, if you find something cool and interesting, have a crack at it. Have a crack at it and then change it. It doesn't matter. Let's not worry too much about getting the plan exactly right and launching it. Let's just have a trajectory. Trajectories don't have goals. And then let's see, how do we create byproducts from our process? And there's one little idea that's just popped out of Iris Sydney that I want to leave you with, because they've made a beautiful film. It's a beautiful idea, and it's about to come out, so it's a little bit early days, but as you're a trusted, small, close circle of friends, I'll let you have it. If you can just pop a bit of volume on, it'd be useful. Thank you. What?
The 5-cent coin. Useless. You wouldn't even pick one up off the floor. But this coin is powerful. One 5-cent coin is enough to give a child clean water for 2 days. It has the power to stop the spread of preventable diseases. To help protect children and their right to a brighter future. Imagine what more of these useless 5-cent coins could do. Support 5 Fund by giving just one 5-cent piece, and together we can turn the most useless coin in Australia into the most powerful coin in the world.